Okay, all right, so everything is set now. So I'm gonna give you the host, and then what you can do is when you're ready, you can get started, I think. Maybe in another minute or two.
Okay.
So I'll make you the host. You can take off from there. Okay, all right, so have a good one.
All right. Hi, everybody. Let me introduce myself. My name is Michael Mulyar. It's good to be here. I'm also playing the Rapid tournament tomorrow. Today and tomorrow, I'm playing the Rapid tournament. So hopefully you will be able to have a chance to play against me. And the games today were very good. I've really enjoyed them. All the players seem to play really well. First game, a black drew against me. Second game was very tough. So it seems like all the players here are doing a very good job of improving their chess, actually. Let me start the screen share. And I will do chess.com. So the topic for today's class, today's webinar, is putting your games through an engine. This is an especially important area for players who want to improve. If your rating is 1400 or 1500 or even 1600, generally putting your games through an engine will be kind of a breath of fresh air where you will be able to see the many things that will help you to improve the game. Usually 3 things that I'll try to focus on today. The first is seeing things that you never suspected were there. Now, I'm an international master. I've been in IM for 20 years. And every time I put a game through the engine, almost always it happens that some move I missed altogether, did not see at all. So engines will always show you the depth of chess. The complexity is remarkable. You will always discover a lot of new things. So that's the first point. The second point about putting your games through an engine that will help you. Let's see, I have a chat here request. Can you show the engine that's default? This is Stockfish. This is Stockfish. This is the Stockfish engine in chess.com that we will be using. Thanks for pointing it out. So the second part is generally being able to recover or usually understand the flow of the game. Many players at about 15 or 1600 already play fairly well, but the point is to be able to chess.com uses it has an engine in the analysis window. Analysis window at chess.com does allow me to use an engine, but you shouldn't use it while you're playing chess, obviously, in the tournament. Just after you're done with the chess game. So the second point, of course, is games will be up and down, and engines will show you kind of executional tactics. So immediate executional tactics that will immediately sway the game. This is the error check, blunder check. Engines will automatically point out if you're making some sort of error, or if you have missed a point where you could have entirely won the game, or the opponent could have won the game, actually. So that is the second point. The third point about using engines and putting your games through an engine is being able to kind of get a better sense of your openings. So you'll be able to fill in a lot of the gaps in your opening knowledge simply by opening up an engine. It will already tell you what's happening in a position as early as move 10, maybe move 8 even, maybe move 6, whereas the human players often aren't able to figure out all of the details or the complexities of the early game. If you're familiar with the first 10 moves of the game, you have a great advantage. You'll be making a lot of progress in your chess. So being able to play out the first several moves in the opening without major surprises and without major incidents is very important, and it will help you greatly to improve your game. So first, the discovering new things. Let me show you first a game from just a couple days ago. I was playing against a master level player at the World Open, online World Open, and this started with a Catalan, d4, knight f6, Knight f3. I usually enter the Catalan by knight f3 order for various reasons, but you can certainly enter the Catalan by means of c4 also. I have a question here. Can't see anything on the screen. Is the chessboard working here? The screen share? Okay. So knight f3, I usually, for various reasons, try knight f3 as the move order. The opponent, okay. Yes, chess.com uses Stockfish. That's what we're going to be using today. So the opponent plays e6, and now I could enter into various systems, but the c4 is the move that I usually play at this point. So the opponent goes d5. This is a Queen's Gambit declined, and here I just enter into the Catalan by means of g3. So I often play the Catalan. I've played it for years. It's a good opening, safe, sound, and it's often a small advantage, often equal. Take a look at how the opponent plays it. I'll just make the moves quickly to show you a little bit of the mechanics here. So bishop b4 check is a very usual move. Bishop d2 blocks. Now black does not take the bishop on d2, but simply retreats, having left the bishop on d2 where it's kind of in the way of white's development. Obviously, you could play bishop b7, but that would be a different, bishop b7, bishop d2 would be a different opening. So bishop b4, kind of a popular choice. Bishop d2, bishop to e7, bishop g2, black would castle. White would castle. Now my opponent enters into the classic closed lines of the Catalan by means of c6. This threatens to take the pawn in c4 and then hang on to it with b5. So white has various moves to play. I play queen c2. Now you might start looking at the engine, what it's saying. The exact move was played by the opponent actually, knight to d7. Now bishop to f4. The opponent plays b6, nothing to comment on, everything done correctly. The engine is showing this plus 009, which means that black has played well in the opening. Knight to c3. Again, black has several choices. The engine shows bishop to a6. That's a very respectable move. I would exactly follow the engine evaluation. Takes, and queen a4 is what I would do. Black would probably go bishop to b7. This appears to be an even position. I would play something like rook to c1. So my thoughts, black is okay here, a6. Probably this is a good way to play, but white is nothing to risk. The engine says e3 to meet up something like b5 with queen d1, and the game goes on from here. So that's a good choice for black. Bishop a6. My opponent played here bishop b7, which is also reasonable. Again, nothing surprising. We've made all the developing moves out of the opening. There shouldn't be anything going on yet. Neither side has any advantage. Rook d1. And now black takes on c4. Again, theory. This is one of the theoretical moves, in fact. I played knight to d2, counterattacking the pawn. Notice that if black plays b5, then I would be able to simply capture on b5, take, and then take on b7, obtaining a good position for the white pieces. So black would avoid this. So the best move for black at this point is knight to d5, and the engine does show it in the window here, knight to d5. Again, what this does is it attacks the bishop on f4 and threatens to capture it, which would be to black's advantage to gain the two bishops. So takes. Queen c7, obviously this attacks my pawn at f4, and I would have to go e3 to defend. And this is a kind of a balanced position. Notice that if black plays something to the effect c5, then I would have d5. This would be opening up in white's favor. Takes, and I have a very powerful light square bishop attacking in all directions. White's position here is preferable. So black plays this correctly again, rook a to c8. I think this move is sensible. Now, all the engines show rook f to e1 as the main move. Now, the reason you might wonder why, black usually has these bishop a6 ideas where they would pin the knight to the rook. So it's a pin, essentially. Does that make sense? Pin. So After rook c8, oops, sorry, rook to c8, my move is rook to d2. The calculation that I have is that bishop a6 would allow knight e4. And I'm sort of okay, I think, but black could certainly have played this. What other moves does black have at this juncture? Various. Rook to d8 was actually played. I think that is a good move. Rook to d1, again, preparing to meet c5 with d5. So knight f6 was played by my opponent, and it appears to me a correct idea that the black is now trying to get ready for c5. So knight e5, and finally black just goes c5. What does this do? Well, the engine suddenly starts jumping up in its evaluation. It's saying that white has succeeded in obtaining advantage. I thought I was doing better, but over the board, I couldn't solve how to do this, how to pursue a small advantage out of the opening. So d5, I did this. Pawn takes was played. Knight takes was played. Knight takes was played. Bishop takes was played. Bishop takes was played. Rook takes was played. Takes. Notice the massive trades, but okay. I have, assuming rook d8 is the move, I would have, that was the move played. I have a knight and a queen versus a queen and bishop. Usually the knight and queen are a more powerful combination than a knight and bishop, so it may be on to slight advantage. So what am I supposed to do here? Well, I couldn't figure it out. I played takes. Black chose correctly to capture with the bishop. Queen e4. G6, letting in the heir for the king. Now the king has a luft. Queen d5. Notice what this threatens to take on f7, and then to queen takes f7, then queen to d8. But generally, it's nothing because black has bishop f6. Now I played knight d7. Notice it would be a terrible mistake to take because of check here and checkmate. However, with proper play, black just plays something like bishop e7. There is nothing to say about this position already. Obviously, I could just force a repetition with takes back. I could simply repeat moves. The engine begins to show you various ways that the game may be played on, like king g2, but it's hard to say after king g7 if white really has any advantage whatsoever. King f3, the engine says. But this gets to the heart of my point. How should white have pursued this position? Well, generally like this, interestingly enough. I had no idea about this. The move queen c4 causes headaches to the black player. Why? Well, take a look. It's threatening to take on d8 and then threatens to take on c4. Well, this move I saw, but I thought that shouldn't be a real issue for the black player. Queen c4 should not be any issue, but okay, let's take a look. So takes, bishop f6, this I could certainly see. Again, knight d7 would do absolutely nothing. But out of the blue, I missed this position. So takes, check. I saw this when I was playing the game. Queen d8 here. Queen takes d8, bishop d8. I saw this far, but I completely misevaluated the position. So now the engine will show you knight c3, bishop f6, and b3. Well, what is going on? Black has a bishop. Why is a knight? I've given up the queen. Why am I better? But after a5, suddenly the white king jumps into the game. King g2, a completely different possibility. Let's say the black king goes into the game, the white king, black king, white king, and suddenly the position is very unpleasant for black. King d7 will be met up by king d5, and the engine already shows 0.8 pawns. It's very likely that white stands to gain here. I mean, they may win, they may not. Let's say g6. Hard to say. h3, says my engine. Bishop h4, well, I wouldn't play bishop h4, but I play something like bishop g7. But I'm sure that this is kind of difficult. Takes. Because of the dominant position of the white king, white is about to benefit greatly from this position. So king c7, f4, king d7, e4 probably, h6, h4. Can black hold this out? I'm not sure. King c7, probably just e6, takes, king takes c6, and my pawn starts moving up the board. So this is very bad for black. So this line is a small opening advantage out of the opening, but a little bit above my intelligence. I didn't see that after a5. I would quickly get the king into the game. And, okay, Black's position, black needs to fight for a draw at this point. The engine says 0.85, which means the black is in trouble. Will lose or draw, I don't know, but this is a much better line than the one I played. So this is the exact example. Out of the blue, you see something which you didn't know about. You discovered something. Obviously, all of these positions, because of a line like this, were not particularly easy for black to play. And of course, when you're playing online or an actual tournament game, this is going to make all the difference in the world if you're able to spot small sort of stabilizing maneuvers. It's a stabilizing move. King f3, king e4 stabilizes a knight on c6. I thought the knight would have nothing to do and obtains an advantage, essentially. Black would be struggling at this point. So this is the first example. Let me show you another example of similar kind of thing, out of the blue kind of logic. This was in the Catalan. Again, small advantage, but the engine shows you something you simply didn't know. You simply didn't know this thing. I didn't know the move that the queen c4 would lead to advantage. I saw the move, but I completely did not evaluate it correctly. It was one ply, one computer move ahead of my logic. The next game I want to show you, this is out of the blue logic, is going to be my game against Grandmaster Jarebuch. So this is from 2017. This is from the US Open. This was a very painful defeat for me, but obviously I learned a lot when I started putting the game through an engine. So I'm playing black here. Jarebuch is playing white, and he starts with an opening called the King's Indian attack. Knight to f3. I usually play d5, and I did this in the same move. g3, knight f6. Bishop g2, c6. This is the usual line that I play against the Queen's Indian attack. Jarebuch castles at this point. Let me try to move this up. Bishop to g4 is the line I often play. There are other moves to play. Bishop f5 certainly gets a lot of airtime. It's a reversed London system, if you know what that is. Bishop g4 is my usual move. And Jarebuch plays d3, which I think is a good means of playing the position. Other moves are available. d4, for instance, is another important move in the position. But d3, I think, challenges black greatly. Knight d7 is good. h3. Attack the bishop. The bishop goes to h5. Many players choose lines like queen e1, e5, and e4. Things like this often get played. A lot of airtime gets spent like this. This is interesting. I've played many games like this. The other important line, of course, is the one that Yaroslav Jarebuch plays, and that's c4. This says that black has to respond in some way or other. If they play e6 and probably takes, will establish a white advantage. Positions of this type are often quite good for white. So I decided on this occasion, this is a challenging position, I decided on this occasion to simply take. Now the engine doesn't particularly like my move. It says that the black will be worse, but take a look. Takes, e5. The move knight c3 is played, and the engine is barking at black's play. It says that this is already 0.48, which is a pretty substantial advantage, but maybe it's still playable. Take a look at the flow of the game here. So bishop to e7, knight to h4, castles. The next move, very strong, queen to c2. Probably other means of pursuing the position available here. The engine says g4, bishop g6. This would be an alternative plan for white. An alternative plan. Again, the engine is right. White is slightly better because they corner the bishop and obtain the two bishops, but black has no weaknesses yet, so this is playable or not. You'd have to decide. Again, even if you put everything through an engine and analyze it out, you probably won't figure out everything whatsoever. Your job is to figure out the most direct or the most forcing means of pursuing the position. So queen c2 makes sense to me. Rook e8. White plays here a3. This prepares for b4. Black plays a5, preventing b4. Rook b1. And of course, he's going to go b4 and will be better, so I have to go something like knight to b6, attacking on c4 and stopping white's queenside expansion. White plays b3, and black plays knight f to d7, and the engine still doesn't like this for black. It's saying that white is much better via knight f5. Take a look. Bishop g6 is played. Now the engine begins to bark at black, and this is probably an important point. Rook d1 here. The moves such as bishop takes f5, queen takes f5 would be simply better for white, while something like well, I mean, something like I would say this: takes, queen c7 would be played. Difficult to establish whether white's advantage is large or small. Small advantage likely for the white player. Small advantage in the game. Knight c5. So this was an important point actually. Rook d1 seems to solidify the advantage. Zareba played here a move that sort of lets black go a little bit. So knight takes e7, reaches the two bishops, but it probably lets go of the position. Takes e4. And suddenly black is able to reroute the position with f6. Okay, I don't think white has a big advantage anymore. The bishop gets rerouted to f7. It looks like white has missed the opening advantage out of his trade on e7. So bishop to e3, probably right. Bishop to f7, rerouting the bishop. Now the engine is showing that white does this correctly. Rook f to d1. This move, the engine says, should be met up by rook d8 when it says the position is about even. I would tend to trust as black has no real weaknesses. But okay, what about queen a3? I actually played this move, frankly. The engine says this is playable. Why? Take a look at what happens here. White played something like rook d2 is the engine evaluation. But again, something like knight c5, b4, knight takes c4. B takes c5, knight d2. Well, this is better for white. This is better for black. Queen takes d2 and a4 does not seem to offer very much advantage to the white player. So Zareba actually plays this conservatively. Interestingly enough, he plays this position queen a3. Sorry, queen takes a3. Plays conservatively with c5, and this trades down to about an even position. So knight takes c5, knight to b5. Pawn takes, bishop takes. Now I have rook c8, rook e8. Or actually, no, sorry, rook a to c8. Notice if I did this, I would be absolutely blasted here. I would do check here and takes. I'd lose my queen. So I have to. I didn't play rook e8. This was not a blunder. Rook a8 actually. Now white plays the move rook c1. This seems to trap the queen, but I have an escape with b4. Notice I'm in business. If he goes rook b1, I have queen b3. This exactly is what he does, actually. Rook b1, queen b3, queen takes b3, bishop takes b3, takes, and the game begins to peter out toward a draw, but in fact, white has to be careful to make the draw at this point. So actually here, a4 is difficult because, okay, bishop a5, b4, bishop a4, a2, bishop a3 was the critical position in the game. And the engine obviously does not see what exactly would happen here. It's not seeing yet the move. Neither did I. I did not see this move at all. But the problem here for white is something that you will discover if you put the engine on deep reply. You will discover that b5, as I played in the game, is not very good, actually. White slowly consolidated the game and won. Bishop f1, and black had to fight for a draw. Still possibly a draw, but I'm worse. But there was a win for black at this point, starting with the move rook e8, which is terrible for white, actually. Why? Because if you do something, black is simply threatening to activate the rook on c6. It would be destructive, terrible. Meanwhile, if you play bishop b2, this would immediately lose. Look, rook b6, I completely missed this tactical idea. It's completely out of the blue. Bishop a1, now black plays bishop e6 with decisive invasion on b1. There's very little that white can do. This is almost heart-stopping action. After rook e6, white would have nothing left. Zareba would be lost in this game, and I would have had a good US Open as opposed to a bad tournament where I played b5, which the engine doesn't yet condemn. Basically, it's 0-0. White already equalizes, while rook e6 would have been just destructive. Bishop b2 is probably called for. Obviously, something like bishop f1 would encounter the same rook b6 strategy. Bishop d3 is the only way to stop the rook from invading on b1. Obviously, bishop e6, rook a1, rook b3 forks the bishops, and it is terrible. Takes, and white is on to lose here. So this would have been life-changing, actually. 2017 US Open. This would have been a fantastic tournament if you found rook e6. But would you find this maneuver, rook e6, rook b6, and then invades on b1? Kind of difficult. You might not spot it. It's out of the blue. But in any case, I was at least vastly entertained by the engine analysis in this game. That covers my section on expect out of the blue things. Once you put things through an engine, you will learn hugely many things which you probably never suspected at all. For instance, the queen exchange in the first game, or the rook transfer, rook e6, rook b6. You simply, it's beyond my calculating abilities or my eyesight. These would be missed in my eyesight issues. I would simply miss these things. And if you start finding these kinds of tactics, gosh, you would start vastly improving. If you're a young player, putting things through engines will generally get you vastly different tactical capabilities, vastly improving your tactics. So if you're rated 1300 and are just a starting out player, put every game through an engine and recognize what tactics you're missing, what tactics you're seeing. This is almost a tactic that could be published in Chess-Kid. Rook e6 wins the game in one move. The next part of the lesson I want to talk about, probably going to be a part of the lesson, maintaining the equilibrium or balance the whole game. What about a game that's balanced? Well, the engines will often show you mistakes in that case. If the engine is balanced, you just maintaining balance, playing your best moves, probably the engine will show you many executional moves where one side or the other could have won. This is an 1800 player playing white, but a strong 1800 player. At some point, he told me he had been over 2100. This is from 2008. Paul Covington is white. He's a well-known player here in Colorado. And this game starts with an English. So c4, e5, g3, knight c6. I'm playing black. Covington is white, plays the white side of the closed English. Bishop g2, g6. Knight c3, bishop g7. This is supposed to be playable, maybe slightly worse, actually. d3 is the next move. f5, I usually play this line. Other lines are possible. Knight f6 obviously is a possible alternative. f5. Covington here plays e4, which makes a lot of sense. It enters into the usual, the pawn structure c4, d3, e4 is very classic in the English here. d6, knight e2, knight f6. He plays rook b1. Again, this is a good move. It threatens queenside expansion. So I would try to reduce the pawns on the board here with a5, a3, castles, b4, takes, and white is a good game out of the open. And this is a kind of, if you don't like this English out for black, then this may be a reason why. Positions where white just obtains this nice pawn center with c4, d3, and e4, and black must shift to defense. So I did that. I played knight e7. Castles, that's it, right? c6. Again, the engine is showing you that black is better, but generally white is doing well here. b5, bishop to e6, takes, reduces the pawns greatly, but it doesn't mean that the game is necessarily going toward a draw. It's going toward a new phase. Rook b7. Okay, this engine evaluates my move as good. Takes, I did this. Obviously, white cannot take because the bishop would take on c4. Notice takes is good only for black. Therefore, Covington takes with a knight. Knight takes c4, bishop takes c4, d5. The engine doesn't really like my move. It says that I had better options. For instance, evicting the rook with bishop c8. Well, I'm sure that's probably better, in fact. I'm sure that would have been a lifeline here, better move for sure out of the opening. That would have been much better. But again, the engine shows you executional moves. Bishop c8, if Michael Mulyar had found bishop c8, he would have been better. d5, and again, Covington is okay. Look for these immediate solutions, immediate tactics. Bishop c8 would have been vast advantage black out of the opening. D5 is white a bit better probably. Takes, bishop G2, and this covers bases. So white has the slightly better side of this position because black finds it difficult yet to organize his game. So the next move, knight C6, bishop D2, rook B8. I want to get rid of the rook, but obviously you saw a few moves earlier, bishop C8, that would have been an immediate solution. It would have been much better. Rook takes B8, queen takes B8. H3, that seems a reasonable move. He's preventing all sorts of bishop G4 tricks, and that's a good move. Again, bishop isn't going to land on an H3, so that's a good move. Queen D6, queen A4, rook B8, and suddenly I realized black is going to fight for a draw here. I mean, the position is opened up and only to white's favor. So rook C1, only better for white in general. The phase of the game has been played kind of sloppy by black, and that often happens. If you play a sloppy game, you will generally be worse. So here, the move that the engine says is, well, I'll show you the move that I played here actually, knight E7, and this is altogether a very weak move actually. The better moves here were something like knight to B4, or actually the engine does say knight E7 is playable. Let's just go knight E7. But of course, notice what Covington does here, D4. This is very strong because if I take, then he would have bishop F4, forking my pieces. Now, I could have handled this much better with queen B4. I could have done this. But after queen D1, black's position is a bit uncomfortable. My two pawns are going to fall off most likely, and I would be worse. Rook B6 here seems to be engine is holding its ground, but at first it appears holding. The bishop G5 is simply better for white. So this is just better for white. H6 takes, knight D4, and white is much better. So the actual example here of the correct move, if you found with an engine, would be E4. Well, I didn't find this. Again, this preserves the balance. Engines are fantastic at showing moves that balance the game. Bishop F4, well, this appears to fork things or skewer, but actually I have queen B4 and nothing at all for white. The engine shows moves like takes. This is even position. Or it shows you queen A1, but again, I have rook C8, and it's probably very even going from now on. Rook takes C8, obviously bishop takes C8. Black should be able to maintain the balance here, but this is life and death. You maintain life balance in a position, and that's good. I played bishop D7, and again, Covington, after this mistake, should have been at a major advantage. Queen A7 was very strong here. Obviously, if I play knight C6, he would play D takes C5, attacking the queen. Bishop takes C5, and black is collapsing after queen E3. I can't hold on to everything in this position. I'm busted here. He played a move that was also actually very strong, queen A2, but you would have to know the logic, how to play this thing out. So E takes D4, but this is where, if you're Covington, put it through an engine. He played here the move knight F4, and this completely lets black off the hook. If he had played bishop F4, I think black would have been in a very bad way. Bishop E5, we both saw this and thought it was playable, but actually no. White plays rook D1, regaining the D4 pawn, pressurizing the D5 pawn. This is executional. Takes, knight F4. Well, the engine is still resisting my views. It says knight D7, but I'm sure this is executional. Bishop takes D5. It appears to me to be execution. White's going to win this game. He's going to win the pawn at D4 and going to score the whole point. Remember, if you're an 1800 player, can you beat an IM? Probably. Are you going to draw an IM? Very unlikely. The games are very complicated. So if you're going to win, you're going to win. If you're going to lose, you're going to lose. Are you going to draw against an IM? Not likely. If you're a GM, you'll draw against an IM easily. But at 1800, just play your best moves. If you win the game, you win the game. Bishop F4 would have won. Knight F4 allows the IM off the hook here. Actually, King H8, King H2, Rook F8, and black is kind of in business. The engine says slightly worse, but I'm suspecting okay, actually. Knight D3, Bishop B5, Bishop B4. I think black is off the hook now. queen d7, knight f4, bishop c4, queen d2, rook b8, rook e1, knight c6, and black is okay here actually. Bishop a3, rook a8, bishop b2, queen f7, knight e6, rook e8. Now black transfers into slight advantage. Black actually, the engine disagrees, says it's equal, but black is a little bit better off. Takes, takes. The best move for white was knight f5, but neither of us saw this move. Takes, queen e1, f4, probably heads to draw. Although white may be still better here. The engine likes white after king g2, but I think this is headed to draw because of the limited material. He played queen takes c1, and now black is slightly better. King takes g7, queen d2, queen f6, and now white has to fight for the draw. He's down a pawn, has to fight for the draw. The engine says 0-0 because of the two bishops, but you have to make a draw like this. So f4, king f7, bishop a1, king e7. The best chance for white at this point, bishop to f3, king d6. The best chance for white was something like bishop d2, which would have bishop b2, which would have held the game probably. Bishop b2, he actually did this. Queen g7. But the engine says this was white's last chance to hold on to the game by bishop a3 check, and it says white is still in business by king c7. And now white would probably win back at least the pawn with this. Queen d7, bishop c5. White is still okay here. But he slowly drifted into a loss after not having played bishop a3, having played bishop d1, queen a7, finally black takes over the game. Queen a2, queen f2, queen a2, queen d2, queen a7, just repeating moves to win time, queen f2, sorry about that. D3, this forces white into a difficult defensive position. Check, king e7, knight take, queen takes, knight takes. This endgame is probably lost or very difficult. King g2, knight c6. You must commend Covington. He does a good job of defending here. King f2, king c5, but black is on the verge of winning the game. Bishop d2, d4. The engine says this is technically winning. I'm sure it's probably winning by an engine. King e1, knight e7, bishop f3, bishop d5. Okay, this is bad for white. Bishop d2, knight f5, king f2, knight d6, g4, knight c4, king e1, still maintaining the position, but it's very difficult. Bishop g2. The engine doesn't like my technique here. It says knight e3 would score the victory. The engine says knight e3 scores victory. Bishop g2 is not going to succeed. Knight e3. And Covington could still have held on the game, obviously, with something like this. Takes, takes, and takes. And there's no easy way for me to collect the point. I mean, I could massage this issue for a long time, maybe even pressing for the king to go in the other direction, try to capture the pawn. It's very difficult for white to defend, but that was the only shot. He played bishop a4, knight g4, and finally white was down 2 pawns and lost. So again, if you're 1800, look for stabilizing moves. If you're about 1800, you can defeat an IM usually, but you're probably not going to draw an IM. Generally, very few games lead exactly drawn. If you put it through an engine, you just have to maintain the balance. You have to maintain your best moves. That's generally chess for you. Covington played this extremely well, holding the draw all the way through, and much of it could have been won. At some point, he could have easily been won. But again, with stabilizing moves, maintaining the balance. Notice this started leaning in black's direction, or at least it was not much worse for black. If he had found that certain immediate tactics with the usual bishop f4 immediate tactics, these would have won for white. Last part of the discussion, filling in gaps of opening knowledge. This is a game from 2001. I'm playing against the Grandmaster Ashley from the US Open 2001. This starts with me playing white, e4, c5, knight f3, d6. Ashley plays the knight, or if d4 takes, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6. Putting this through an engine, even the first few moves will greatly help you understand this position. So I play the English attack, bishop b3. Ashley plays e6, which is a hugely complicated line, but I'm going to follow the engine recommendations here. F3, b5, and queen d2 is my plan for action. Knight to d7, the position is usual, and now I play g4. This is the usual way to play the position. But putting this through an engine will fill many of your gaps in knowledge. Obviously, most players nowadays play h6. 20 years has passed from this game. Most players play a3, bishop b7, castles queenside, and rook c8 is mostly how this is played these days. H4, d5, rook g1, d takes c4, g5, attacking the knight here, takes, knight d5, knight e4 is unimaginably complicated position. Unimaginably complicated position. G6, f6, bishop f2 is unimaginably complicated. Obviously, black players usually go b4, a4, rook h2 is an unimaginably complicated position. Knight b3, queen c6. If you spend some time with an engine, you'll recognize this is playable both white and black. F5, knight g5, bishop e7, f4, takes, queen takes, king b1, knight c3, takes, bishop g2, bishop c5, I think. No, wrong. Takes, bishop g2, queen d6 is the move. Yeah, I'm hearing, yeah. So this is unimaginably complicated. If you spend a little bit of time with an engine, you will be able to recognize at least some of the key points in a complex opening such as the English attack. This has nowhere been analyzed to the end. But again, you must know two things. If you put it through an engine, it will immediately show you moves like h6. It will immediately show you moves like a3, things which were gap-like. Nobody knew what these positions were like. What would happen if you just play a3? Simply stopping black from playing b4. Again, I could also go into queenside castling, but here you test immediate solutions. b4 is very aggressive. Something like this is possible also. If you go knight a5, black, knight e2 rather, black's main move here is the usual knight e5 or queen c7, this is my engine. It's very complicated. So simply checking these positions on an engine will greatly help you to understand the game as it's going on. Obviously, you know, I have to rely on notes in a position like this. Queen c7, h4, d5, bishop f4, e5, bishop h2 is very complex. But putting this through an engine will fill in your gaps of knowledge. You'll simply know how to play these positions. You'll simply know, well, takes, g5, takes, rook to h8. If you analyze it with an engine and spend some time analyzing with an engine, you'll learn what it is saying usually in the opening theory. The position may be a mess. So this is a mess. Obviously, queenside castling is a mess. Queenside castling is a mess. Queenside castling b4 knight e2 is a mess. You have to spend a lot of time with an engine. And I would personally recommend a3 to not disallow b4, bishop b7, castles, rook c8, h4, and d5 as the main line for white. Rook g1. Notice this threatens to go g5 and attack the knight. Takes, knight d5, and knight takes c4 is a hugely complicated position here. Queen b6, I would have to go f6, g6, f6, and bishop f2. So spending time with an engine will fill your opening gaps. What was the theory like in 2001? Well, it was not very good for black. Usually, instead of h6, Ashley played knight b6, which engines usually do not prefer nowadays. Again, because of the usual a3 kind of strategy, which would stop black from further pursuing counterplay. But again, I didn't know this. I played castles queenside, which is probably still playable. Ashley plays bishop b7, and I play king b1. Again, Ashley has a whole variety of means of playing, but the knight on b7, probably not a particularly good strategy. There's nothing that he can do to cause attack against my queen side. If b4, then I would have knight e2 apparently. The engine will immediately give you knight c4, but this is not very good. Takes, rook d3, knight, or actually, yeah, it's saying this is playable. The engine said this is playable. Queen d7 is playable for black. So therefore, this was still playable. Queen d3 was still okay for black, actually. D5 was still okay for black from black's point of view. He had to play b4. This was an absolutely necessary move, b4. Again, filling in the gaps. I could have certainly prevented b4 with a3, which I should have. King b1, knight f to d7, but now, okay, bishop g5, and this begins to be slightly difficult for black. He lacks castling both kingside or queenside. He played queen c8. Theory at the time said that knight b5 was not very good because of takes, and takes. And that's probably still correct. Takes, and takes is probably better for white. I have 3 pawns for a piece, so this should be probably better for me. He played queen c8. I'll show you how the game ended. Queen c8, queen f2, and now white is better actually out of the opening. b4, knight e2, d5, knight g3, queen c7, bishop to d3, knight to c5, rook e1, knight d3, rook takes d3, and this has developed in white's favor. I'm about to close the position with e5, and Ashley's position is very difficult. So he played bishop c5. The engine likes this move, but actually it's not good because of knight h5. And suddenly black's position is collapsing. He has to defend on g7. It's a one-shot, one type of deal. What does he do? Castles, but here I have a winning tactic that I was able to spot. Bishop f6. Ashley is in trouble after bishop f6. Obviously, the engine is going to show you moves like g6, but after queen e3, rook fc8, queen h6, bishop f8, bishop g7, black is in deep trouble. This is deep trouble for black. Queen e5, says the engine. Bishop takes, knight f6 is losing here. Here and now g5 is going to lose black's position, lose the house, takes, and knight h7. I hadn't completely calculated it out, but with an engine, you'll be able to fill in the gaps here. He played g takes f6, but this was a strange conclusion because after queen d2, black had to resign. There's absolutely nothing that he can do to stop the queen from landing on h6 and then on g7. Obviously, he must have thought that this was okay. Takes, and rook c8, counterattacking on c2, but that doesn't work. Queen h6, queen c2, king a1, and black is busted. There's nothing he can do to prevent g7. While I'm covering the c1 square take, I'd simply take, and take on c1. So let me finish it up, wrap it up here. I think I've talked long enough. So again, 3 points about analyzing your games with an engine. The first, obviously discovering things you never suspected were there. It'll greatly expand your horizon if you're a junior player to see exactly what might be the things you're missing in chess, or the things that you never suspected were there. Usually engines will be able to show you many things that human beings never even suspected were there. The second, things you suspected were there. If you're Paul Covington, you definitely can make a draw at least against Michael Mulyar. You're a strong player, experienced player, but you're going to have to maintain the balance, and the engine will show you how to do that. And the third, obviously, is analyzing your openings. If you spend time on an opening like the Sicilian, simply studying it with an engine, it will show you all the different moves, and you'll become an expert at your house. You can now play this kind of opening with white or with black, and you'll vastly make progress. If you're 1,600 players that as a little bit analyze the Najdorf with an engine, this opening can be made hugely playable either other player. Again, 2001, I was already an IM. I had no vast knowledge of the system. I winged it and played it not so particularly brilliantly. Obviously, I should know that A3 is the suggested weapon of choice in these positions. That's how the game is supposed to be played. I'll open up to questions here. If anybody has questions, I'll stop the screen share. Or I will stop the screen. I will reduce the screen share. I'll ask if anybody has questions. Questions? I'll take any questions. Let me see here. You may type in a question you may type in a question in chat, or I will answer questions if you want to, if you have them if you just want to ask the question in voice. Somebody asked, how do I slow the game down? That's an important question. I was going to talk about that in my tomorrow's session. If the game is very quick and your job is to slow the game down, that's important. How do you make the engine show lines and moving? How do you make the engine show lines and moving? Generally, the Stockfish is a fantastic engine. You're going to have to kind of test the strong moves. Something that attacks a pawn, something that attacks the knight. Remember what Ashley could have done? He could have attacked my knight, and that was a very powerful move. He chose not to do it. He kind of played passively, and he allowed white to unravel, to develop. Let me get back to the screen share here. Let me get back to the screen share. Yeah, so remember, A3 would have greatly stopped the black's actions. A3. Meanwhile, with an engine, if you're analyzing this, well, Michael Mulyar played King B1. What is the move? Look for what the engine is saying. B4. This is a strong move. Test it out. Play out the line. Knight C to E2. Knight C4 would have been good for black. Yeah, show lines. Yeah, look at it's an extremely powerful tool in chess.com, the analysis board. It gives you all of the needed options to analyze all of your games simply by analysis. It's usually reliable. The engine here, the Stockfish engine is number one. If you don't use Stockfish, use Komodo. If you don't use Komodo, use Houdini. There are several engines you could use. Which is a better, Lead Chess or chess.com engines? I do think that chess.com are more reliable, actually. Frankly, chess.com are more reliable engines. I like chess.com engines. The Stockfish is a better engine. Lead Chess uses, I don't know what engine Lead Chess uses. What engine? If you use Lead Chess, then you can also use Lead Chess, but chess.com is a good one. Stockfish engine, it's going to be up to speed. It's not even important necessarily to put it on deep ply or analyze it on deep ply. Just look at a surface sort of quick summary that the engine will give you of the games, of the critical moments. The idea is for you to be able to analyze to understand the general pattern or the general flow of the game. So like Queen B4, for instance, would be met up by Knight E3, and if I go Rook D3, this gets very interesting. You see the engine shows you Queen D7 defending the bishop. I would have to take, and the engine is going to go D5. So just follow the line. How do you make the engine show arrows and turn off self-analysis? Turn off self-analysis like this. Turn off self-analysis. This will be turned off. This will be turned on. Engines to show arrows. Simply this will show the arrow. My arrow. Just click on it. Yeah, this will show the arrow. So yeah, let's see where did we end up? E4 C5. Yeah, this is my Najdorf. Or actually, yeah, G4, Knight B6. This is my Najdorf. A3 it says castles. Bishop B7. I played King B1, but certainly the opponent Ashley could have made use of that. That was not 100% ideal. Takes here. Queen D7 takes D5. would have been good for black only. Queen E1 says the engine, queen B3, D takes C4 would have been better for black. So remember, check the aggressive evaluations. If you're going to analyze quickly, if you're going to put it on an engine on deep ply, which I rarely do, then it's going to give you all sorts of things. But if you check quickly for the aggressive options, that will be just as effective. Just as effective to look for aggressive options in a position like this, well, you have to check a few moves. Like what would happen if they take? Well, then white would take. That would be easier for white. If they take on G4, that would be again easier for white. But okay, the engine immediately gives you the lowdown, queen D7, rook E3, D5, and the aggressive options here will fill in a lot of your gaps of knowledge. Queen B3, pawn takes, this will fill in your gap. G5, pawn takes, knight takes F3. This will greatly fill in your gap if you simply follow the aggressive line. Bishop D5, or no, that's the wrong move. What does the engine want me to do here? It's not responding to me here. Bishop takes F3, of course. Rook takes F3. Knight E4, rook D3, knight D2, rook takes D2, queen takes D2, bishop G2, rook C8, and I think black is in the driver's seat in this position. White has to fight for a draw. Bishop B7, rook C7, bishop A6, and finally black plays bishop C5 and is going to castle. So arrows, yeah, chess.com, fantastic resources for you to use the chess.com analysis board. Obviously, the most important thing is look for aggressive options, aggressive moves, and immediate solutions as you're analyzing your game. Don't look for abstract patterns. Some players would like to analyze the London system, generally just try to analyze it out. If you know, this would be the strategic plan, this would be the strategic plan. And it's not very effective. There's too many. Try to analyze aggressive options and concrete variations. The other sort of thing I often hear, that one IM says, well, I'm analyzing the Ruy Lopez and I'd like to check every single pawn break in a position with an engine. Well, the IM has his point, of course. You want to check every single aggressive move, every single aggressive possibility, every single aggressive no move, but try your best. Again, over the board, you're not going to find even 20% of what the engine shows you. In analysis, try to do your best, but your main point is try to just establish the overall flow. Try to test the aggressive possibilities with a Stockfish engine and see where that leads you. Obviously, if Ashley had played this more aggressively, more concretely, he would have won the game. If he played very passive moves here, the usual knight d7 passive move, bishop g5, and white was winning or better out of the opening. The engine shows you already white's is better out of the opening. Any other questions? Yeah, so everybody can make enormous progress by putting all of their games through an engine. All of the games through an engine, simply analyzing the aggressive moves in every position will help you both to keep the equilibrium and also discover many new possibilities. The more aggressively you play, probably the better player you are. Don't assume that everything ends in draws. Assume you're just making good moves. Okay, I'm going to stop the screen share. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you. I hope this has been useful to you. There are many different engines to use. There are many different techniques of using an engine, but my advice is try to use whichever engine you use to try to analyze the key points in every game and look for immediate solutions and immediate tactics. That will help you to become a better player over the board. All right. I think it's 4 o'clock, so I'm going to turn it over to Ken. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to be logging out here today, unless there are other questions. Thank you.